Is the universe as old as we have been told? Is the universe really 18 billion years old? Is the Earth 4.5 billion years old? Well, let's take a look. Let's take first of all a look at the moon. Now, the moon is supposed to be approximately 4.5 billion years old, and the craters in the moon, on the moon's surface, are supposedly billions of years old as well. But if we look at the viscosity of the moon rock, it would limit it to just a few million years at the most. Now, when we're talking about viscosity, we're talking about how fast a liquid or even a solid that acts as a liquid flattens out. For instance, if you take water and you pour it out to something flat, it's going to flatten out very quickly. So the viscosity of water, for instance, is pretty high. If you take, let's say, honey and pour it out, and it's, let's say, 65 degrees in the room, then it's going to take a while for that to completely flatten out, but it will over time. So the viscosity of honey, for instance, at, let's say, room temperature, would be lower than the viscosity of water. But believe it or not, solids can also have viscosity, especially when you're talking about rock and that type of thing. For instance, if you go to the East Coast or to Europe, to some of the old buildings that are 100, 150, 200 years old that have glass in them, that, let's say, are 100 years old, and you measure the width of the, or I should say, the thickness of the glass up at the top and the thickness down at the bottom, you'll discover that the thickness of the glass has increased the further that you go down. So even though glass to us is a solid, and if you run into it, you definitely would agree with that, but it also acts as a liquid over time in the sense that it does have viscosity. Given enough time, glass would flatten out as well. Well, the same thing goes with rock, even hard rock. So when they brought back the rock from the moon, they after they could tell what kind of rock it was, they could figure out that the viscosity of the moon rock would make the moon itself totally flat in just a few million years. So there would be no craters if the craters are as old as what we have been told by evolutionists. Short-term comets last 10,000 years at most. Okay, what happens with the short-term comets is as they're going around, let's say, a star, let's say, for instance, our sun, then actually the energy from the sun, the gravity from the sun, the different forces can actually tear a comet apart. And over 10,000 years, short-term comets are destroyed. Well, the problem is we still have a number actually of short-term comets. Well, what this would mean is and this is what many many evolutionists in the past, I don't know if it's as many now as it used to be, used to think that there was something called the Oort cloud, which would actually produce these short-term comets out in an area we couldn't see. Of course, now the science does not go with that whatsoever, and if you take the fact that short-term comets last 10,000 years at the most, there should be none, and that would mean that our universe is definitely less than 10,000 years. So the question is there a comet factor making new short-term comets on a continual basis? Star clusters in the universe are moving away from a common point that would show that the universe is much younger than billions of years old. The magnetic field around the Earth is decreasing by 50% every 1400 years. And by the way, we have been measuring that, the strength of the magnetic field for hundreds of years, and as far as we could tell, it's pretty consistent. So that would mean if we go back in time just 20,000 years, then the Earth would have the magnetic strength of a magnetic star. Much too hot for there to be life on Earth. So this would mean that the maximum age of the Earth would be somewhere between 10 and 20,000 years. The rates of erosion on the Earth would indicate that the continents would have eroded away many times in the so-called billions of years that the Earth is supposed to have existed. Now, helium is being produced constantly by radioactive materials. In another video, I talked about the radiometric dating methods. Well, one of the things that many of the radioactive elements put off, in other words, produce, is helium. And by that they can pretty much tell how old the Earth is by how much helium is in our atmosphere. And there is no scientific indication to believe that there is any helium escaping. There is only enough helium on Earth to account for thousands of years, not millions or billions. Now, all of the oil pressure in the Earth would be released in tens of thousands of years. The oil in the ground actually is there by pressure, but the amount of pressure is being decreased all the time. The oil seeps into rock, there's leaks, there's that type of thing. And so the amount of pressure, if the Earth was, let's say, hundreds of millions or billions of years old, all of the pressure on oil would have dissipated. Earth's rotation is slowing down all the time. A few million years ago, the Earth would have been spinning too fast for life to have survived. As I mentioned, the oil pressure would have been released. The Mississippi Delta was formed in approximately 9,000 years. That is at the present rate, not millions of years as we were told. At the present rate, the Niagara Falls began under 10,000 years ago, not millions or billions of years as we were told. In fact, it has now become evident that some of the people that were ardent evolutionists actually made up the erosion rate to fit their basically their time frame of how long Niagara Falls had been there. In reality, because when floods come, that type of thing, it erodes faster, that the Niagara Falls has been there at most about 10,000 years. Salt in the oceans is enough for thousands of years, but not millions, as we've been told. Salt in the ocean, if being put into the oceans at present rate, or even much slower than today, would be deadly to all forms of life that live in the oceans. That is, if it had been there for millions and millions of years. So is the universe 18 billion years old? Is the Earth 4.5 billion years old? Well, the scientific evidence is overwhelming that the Earth has only a small fraction of the age that we have been told. Thank you for watching this video.